What if I told you dragons might not be just random fairy tale monsters? Think about it. No matter where you go on this planet, every single culture seems to have a dragon story. Europe had knights fighting fire-breathing lizards. China had sky dragons bringing rain and good fortune, and the Aztecs had feathered serpents literally chilling as gods. That's like humanity's first global meme before the internet was even a thing. And here's the weird part. These people never met. A Viking farmer never chatted with a Chinese emperor about flying lizards over Discord. So how did everyone come up with almost the same terrifying creature? Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, rabbit, dragons aren't real, they're just stories. And sure, I'm just a dumb rabbit with oversized glasses, but when archaeologists started digging up giant bones, things got interesting. Imagine being a villager 2,000 years ago and stumbling on a T-Rex skull. You don't say, oh look, an extinct apex predator from the late Cretaceous period. No, you scream dragon and run for your life. So here's the big question. Were dragons just imagination gone wild, or did ancient people actually stumble upon evidence of real creatures that inspired the myths? Let's hop into the bones, the legends, and the fiery truth behind humanity's obsession with dragons.
Let's take a quick world tour, Dragon Edition. Buckle up because apparently humans everywhere agreed, yeah, let's invent a giant reptile that can ruin your day. First stop, Europe. Medieval folks pictured dragons as giant lizards with wings, claws sharp enough to slice through armor, and flames hotter than your ex's mixtape. These were the ultimate boss fights for knights. No side quests, no cheat codes, just you, your sword, and a flamethrower with scales. Dragons here symbolized evil, chaos, and the stuff church sermons warned you about. If you slayed one, congrats. You weren't just a hero, you were a walking medieval Marvel movie. Hop over to China and dragons are a totally different vibe. Forget fire-breathing monsters. These were wise, benevolent sky serpents bringing rain, rivers, and good harvests. They didn't hoard treasure in caves, they were the treasure, symbols of power and luck. Emperors literally claimed to be sons of the dragon, which is basically ancient flexing. My dad is a cosmic noodle with weather superpowers. Meanwhile, in Mesoamerica, civilizations like the Maya and the Aztecs worshipped Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Part bird, part snake, part god of creation. Imagine explaining that combo to a 5-year-old. Yes, Timmy, it's a snake, but with feathers, and it can also invent the world. Kids back then must have had wild bedtime stories. Even in Africa, legends told of monstrous serpents and lake dragons, sometimes linked with floods or guarding sacred waters. It seems wherever humans live near rivers, mountains, or caves, someone went, yup, big scaly thing lives there, don't poke it. And here's the ticker. These cultures weren't swapping fanfiction on Reddit, yet somehow dragons pop up everywhere. Almost like humanity collectively copy-pasted the same nightmare into different mythologies. Why? Well, maybe because we were all looking at the same thing. Massive bones sticking out of the ground, storms we couldn't explain, and predators that already looked halfway to being dragons. Instead of paleontology, ancient people had mythontology. So yeah, dragons might not be real animals, but they're the closest thing we have to a universal cultural Wi-Fi signal. No matter where you went, someone would whisper, "Careful, a dragon lives there."
Okay, here's where things get juicy, or bony, I guess. For thousands of years, people stumbled across giant skeletons without the faintest clue about dinosaurs. To them, these weren't prehistoric reptiles from the late Jurassic. No, they were dragon receipts, proof that the scary stories weren't just bedtime warnings, they were field reports. Take the Mongolian deserts. Nomads wandering around the Gobi stumbled upon skulls with long beaks and neck frills, fossils we now identify as Protoceratops. To an ancient herder, that was 100% a dragon hatchling.
And fun fact, this might be where the myth of the griffin, half lion, half eagle came from. Imagine some guy pointing at a beaked dinosaur skeleton and going, yeah, clearly a bird-lion hybrid. Science. Then there's ancient Greece. When farmers dug up massive bones, they didn't say, oh, sauropod femur. They spun tales of giants and hydras. The hydra, that multi-headed nightmare Hercules had to slay, may have been inspired by jumbled piles of dinosaur bones eroding out of hillsides. Picture it. Villagers see several fossilized skulls together and conclude, heads keep growing back. Nature didn't invent that myth. Confused humans did. Or how about China again? For centuries, apothecaries sold dragon bones as medicine. Spoiler, those were dinosaur fossils ground into powder. Imagine being sick in 500 AD, walking into a shop and the pharmacist is like, here, eat some crushed stegosaurus. That'll fix your headache. Honestly, that's metal. And don't forget North America. Indigenous tribes encountered giant bones on the plains, mastodons, mammoths, and later dinosaur fossils. They wove stories of thunderbirds and monstrous serpents, guardians of rivers and storms. Considering they literally found skulls the size of SUVs, can you blame them? Here's the fun thought experiment. Imagine you're a shepherd 2,000 years ago. You're tending sheep, you trip, and boom, you faceplant into the jaws of a fossilized T-Rex skull. Are you going to carefully sketch it and hypothesize about extinct megafauna? Or are you going to sprint back to town screaming, the fire lizard gods are real and they want my lunch? Archaeology shows us a pattern. The bigger and weirder the fossil, the wilder the story. Elephant skulls with giant central nasal cavities misinterpreted as cyclops heads. Whale skeletons found inland, sea dragons. Massive claw marks in stone, proof that some monster crawled out of the earth. In reality, geology and paleontology had the answers, but people didn't have the textbooks yet. And here's the kicker. Early dragon experts weren't totally wrong. They recognized these bones belonged to creatures far larger and stranger than anything alive. Their mistake was assuming those creatures still existed somewhere, hiding in caves or oceans, waiting to ruin your day. So yeah, dinosaurs and other prehistoric beasts may not have been called dinosaurs until the 1800s, but their fossils had already been sparking dragon stories for millennia. Dragons, in a way, were humanity's first attempt at paleontology, with a lot more fire breathing and a lot less peer review. Alright, let's trade myths for microscopes for a minute. If dragons weren't literally stomping around breathing fire, why do their descriptions match so many real animals? The answer? Evolution already gave Earth some pretty terrifying prototypes. Let's start with the dinosaurs. These guys were basically dragon cosplay millions of years before humans existed. Sharp teeth? Check. Claws the size of swords? Check. Wings in some species? Double check. Paleontologists now believe some raptors even had feathers. So yeah, Jurassic Park forgot to add the fabulous plumage. Imagine explaining that to a medieval knight. Yes, sir, your dragon is technically a chicken with anger issues. And then there's pterosaurs, the flying reptiles. If you ever see a fossil of Quetzalcoatlus, one of the biggest pterosaurs, your brain immediately goes, that's a dragon. Wingspan as wide as a small airplane, a beak like a spear, and it could probably swallow a sheep whole. No wonder ancient cultures saw winged fossils and drew sky serpents. Now let's slither into nightmares. Titanoboa. 60 million years ago, South America was home to a snake longer than a school bus. 30 feet of muscle that could crush a crocodile like a soda can. If villagers stumbled on its vertebrae, you bet they'd start drawing lake dragons and serpent gods. Honestly, Titanoboa makes modern anacondas look like spaghetti noodles. Speaking of crocodiles, these living fossils are basically budget dragons. Crocs have armored scales, endless patience, and jaws that could snap your ribs like breadsticks. And their ancestors? Even scarier. Ancient croc relatives like Deinosuchus were the size of buses and could munch on dinosaurs for lunch. If you've ever locked eyes with a crocodile, you know exactly why humans invented water dragons. It's survival psychology. That thing stares at me like I owe it money.
But what about the fire-breathing part? That sounds impossible, right? Well, not entirely. Nature has some weird tricks. The bombardier beetle can spray boiling hot chemicals from its butt like a living flamethrower. Some birds regurgitate burning oil seeds. And there's speculation that if certain ancient reptiles evolved gas-producing sacs, they could have pulled off the fire-breathing trick. So while dragons didn't exist, biology didn't exactly close the door on the idea either. The more you look at the fossil record, the more you realize dragons are a mashup remix of real creatures. Wings from pterosaurs, scales from crocs, snake bodies from Titanoboa, claws from raptors. Humans just combined the scariest features into one ultimate boss monster. It's like prehistoric Photoshop. And honestly, that's why dragons feel so real. Because they're not pure fantasy. They're Frankenstein's mixtape of animals that actually walked, flew, and slithered on Earth. We didn't make dragons out of thin air. We made them out of bones and imagination. So no, you won't find a fire-breathing lizard waiting in a cave. But if you piece together the fossils we've dug up, you'll get something close enough to make you sleep with a nightlight.
Here's the thing. Dragons aren't just bones and biology, they're psychology. They're the ultimate projection of human fears and dreams. Think about it. Early farmers looked at storms ripping through their fields, floods swallowing villages, volcanoes belching fire, and their brains went, okay, something big and angry is doing this. Enter the dragon, a one-size-fits-all monster that explains every disaster you couldn't control. Crop failure? Dragon. Lightning? Dragon. Your goat went missing? Definitely dragon. But dragons weren't just fear, they were also aspiration. Humans can't fly, can't breathe fire, can't hoard mountains of gold unless you're Jeff Bezos. Dragons could. They embodied ultimate power. That's why emperors in China claim dragon ancestry. It's like saying, forget your royal bloodlines, I'm literally half storm lizard. Instant respect. And across cultures, dragons became the perfect boss monster in humanity's mental video game. They guarded treasures, rivers, mountains, even the weather itself. To defeat one was to prove you were worthy, not just strong. Honestly, it's the same trope video games still use. Congratulations, hero, you beat the dragon, now here's loot and XP. Here's my dumb rabbit take. If dragons were real, I wouldn't be making YouTube videos. I'd be running a 5-star dragon barbecue stand. Fresh roasted carrots, char grilled by authentic dragon breath. Only 3 gold coins per skewer. Michelin stars incoming. But jokes aside, the dragon sticks around because it's too useful to kill. As symbols, they explain chaos, inspire awe, and give storytellers the ultimate monster template. Even in places without dinosaur bones, people still invented dragon-like creatures because our imaginations filled in the gaps with exactly what scared us most. A predator bigger, faster, and scarier than we could handle. So yeah, dragons aren't fossils we can dust off in a museum. They're fossils inside our culture, living, breathing, evolving in myth, religion, and art. And honestly, that might make them even more real than we think.
So here's the plot twist. Dragons may not exist in flesh and blood, but try telling that to modern culture. These creatures refuse to die. They've just respawned in new forms. Look at Game of Thrones. Those dragons weren't side characters. They were the nuclear weapons of Westeros. Or take Pokemon. Half the fan favorites are basically dragons with attitude problems. Sports teams? They slap dragons on their logos because nothing screams, "We're terrifying," like a fire-breathing lizard with wings. Even science can't escape. Every time paleontologists find a new dinosaur, headlines scream, "Real-life dragon discovered." Because let's be honest, we're addicted to the idea. The dragon is humanity's ultimate meme, constantly rebooted, rebranded, and still trending after thousands of years. And that's the kicker. Dragons aren't just mythological fossils, they're cultural immortals. They've survived longer than kingdoms, religions, and probably my attention span. They prove that even when science explains the bones, the imagination refuses to let go. So, are dragons real? Not in the way knights feared or emperors claimed, but in our stories, in our symbols, and in every jaw-dropping fantasy movie poster, dragons are more alive than ever. So here's the final truth. Dragons weren't real animals, but they were real enough to shape our myths, our cultures, and even our science. Ancient people found giant bones and spun legends. Modern scientists dug deeper and uncovered dinosaurs. Turns out both sides were telling a version of the same story, just with different special effects. And honestly, I kinda love that. Dragons may not have soared through the skies, but they're still flying high in our imagination. From medieval knights to Netflix binges, they never really left. They just evolved, like Pokemon but with more fire hazards. As for me, I'm just a dumb rabbit with oversized glasses, but I know this much: dragons never die. They just respawn as memes. So, if you want to keep chasing weird legends, wild science, and questionable rabbit jokes, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and hop along with me. Because who knows, maybe the next fossil we dig up won't just explain the legend, it might start a brand new one.